We're going to go ahead and introduce our guests. And one of them, many of you know already. He has his own TFR show and his own YouTube channel. He's been in the community quite some time doing all kinds of good things. And he is Paul from Paul on the Plane. So how you doing, Paul? You with us?
I'm here. Thanks for having me, Bob. And everybody, great to be here. Thanks for having me. It's awesome. I'm really excited to talk about this. It's a subject near and dear to my heart.
He's a shill.
He's a shill. Yeah, we heard it straight from you. Okay. And also with Paul today, Paul, this all kind of came about by Paul released a video, well, a couple of video series. You did one with Scott, and you also did one with God, what was the guy's name, Paul? I always who is it?
Archer
Sage. Yeah, I don't know why I keep forgetting his name. But you did a video series with Archer Sage and basically a whole bunch of forensic analysis of NASA photographs. And the series were just absolutely spot on. They're so good. And then after that, you teamed up with Scott. And Scott Henderson, everybody, is a contributor to an outstanding moon landing debunk website called aulis.com, AULIS.com. We've talked about it several times before on Globebusters, and it's a really good site for just debunking NASA from start to finish. Here we have this particular article right here, Scott Henderson's Apollo Studies 2018, and we're going to be going through a lot of this stuff with him today. So let me go and introduce him. Scott Henderson, how you doing today, Scott?
Very good. Thank you for having me on the show.
We thought what might be kind of a good way to kick this thing off is, the way that when Scott and I first spoke, the way he kind of presented his findings to me was kind of getting me to kind of set the context and be in a position to kind of review the photos and have, a right frame of reference. And Scott, maybe you could just do that kind of same thing and talk a little bit about, what you've uncovered about the site itself, where these pictures were taken, and just how that all came about. Because I think as we go through the photos, then it will, put us in a position to be able to receive them, and it'll make a lot more sense that way. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, that sounds like a good plan. What you have to realize is when NASA started out to go to the moon, that was their intention. Their intention wasn't to do a simulation. So, any film director who set out initially to do a simulation of a moon landing, would have complete control of the set, complete control of the actors, complete control of all the props and lighting effects and any atmospheric effects that they would have. That would be all planned and laid out and done. And of course, if you're going to do a series of 6 of them, you'd be shooting them back to back. Well, NASA initially was going to the moon. And at some point in time, they decided that they couldn't fail. They had to prove that they were a superior nation in the Cold War. And when they decided to do the simulation, they were using the equipment that NASA had already produced, the sets that they were practicing on, and the props as well, like the lander and the experimental packages and stuff like that. And of course, anyone producing and directing this thing also had to use the astronauts as well. They weren't actors. Okay, and as a matter of fact, any director would want to have complete control of the cameras. Well, they didn't have control of the cameras. The astronauts had control of the cameras as well. And this is what has happened throughout these videos and the photos, that the anomalies are there. The astronauts intentionally wanted to show the fraud. They most likely were doing this for their three fallen comrades, the Grissom, Chaffee, and White, and they were documenting this in these photographs. They probably weren't intended to be released to the media at any time. I mean, the initial photographs that were put out there was maybe 2 or 3 dozen for each mission that were put up for magazines, newspapers, and other media events. And these other photographs were just simply archived, tucked away, and 25 years later, NASA wants to keep promoting their moon landing, and they started putting up the photographs online. They digitized them, put them up, and everybody looks at them and says, oh yeah, we landed on the moon. That's not what's in the photographs. What's in the photographs is the very detailed documentation of where it was actually shot, the equipment that was used, that it was the same equipment being used over and over again for all 6 missions when they were filming this. And when they weren't using it, it was just left lying outside on the ground. You can see the equipment aging with time through the 6 missions. If you're looking at particularly the experimental equipment, okay, and when it got so bad, then they had to replace it.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, Scott. This is one of the things that I found really fascinating about this is when you look at some of these photographs. I mean, it appears that they're like old cars and old pieces of cars and stuff like that. And you told me something that really kind of blew me away about where NASA had originally set up to do some of these pictures, and that was in Flagstaff, right? And in particular, I believe you said that it was like in a junkyard in Flagstaff. Is that right?
Well, the landfill site's still there today. It's right on the southeast corner of Cinder Lake, and Cinder Lake is the moonscape that NASA recreated on there, and that's where they were doing all the simulations. That's where Farouk Albez was training the astronauts to get their timing down and to familiarize them with the use of the equipment. And it only makes sense that they would use a landfill site if they were going to create something. They already had the big earth-moving equipment there. Nobody would even notice that you're doing anything, even if you're flying over it. It just, it's just big equipment moving dirt around. So it was quite easy to create the set, and it's quite easy to remove it after you're done.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what they did to kind of set this set up is they covered a lot of the stuff with kind of a gray ash type of soil, or a gray colored soil. Is that right? Or how exactly do you think they prepped this, to hide most of the debris in the landfill?
Well, they probably used a stone slinger, probably mixed it into a slurry and blended the color of the clay in that they wanted to get the color that they wanted for the moon. And you can see that's covered with that, and some of the rocks that are shown when they're chipped back, they're much whiter underneath. They're either using a plaster coating or a lighter clay. And even if you take a look at Google Earth at Cinder Lake, you can see the landfill site there, and you can see that very white clay in that landfill site. It's still there today.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing.
Might be a good idea, Scott, if you mentioned kind of how you, before we get into the photos, another kind of, I think, interesting point was, how many hours you have spent, to get to this point. This isn't something, somebody jumping online, scrolling through photos in an afternoon. You're not going to see this stuff. It obviously is hours and hours and hours of time. So I thought it was very interesting. How did you get into
Well, I was looking after my parents as they aged, as they got older, and when it became time that I had to be up all night long to monitor them, especially my father, who was very tipsy for a number of years, and I just sat up and I had a monitor on him, and I had to find something quiet to do. And I've always been interested in NASA and space and everything else, and I was basically on the NASA server and reading through most of their documents on there, all of their server reports on all their tests and trials of equipment. And then I got into the photographs. And when I started to find a few small things, I became more and more interested. And when I really found some solid evidence, okay, I was intrigued, and I had to keep looking to see what else there was there, and eventually put together just exactly what the astronauts were doing, okay, because they're the ones taking the photographs, and they're the ones that are showing it to you, okay.
Very much.
And
yeah.
and each pair of astronauts have their own methods on how they present the stuff. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were very subtle in how they presented it. They simply made some nice clean shots of it, and by the time you got to Apollo 12, I mean, they're literally pointing it out. The surveyor itself, even in the cuff checklists, they're required to photograph it, wipe it with their finger, and then rephotograph it again. And you'll see that in there. And the reason they do that on the surveyor is because the piece of machinery is 100% clean as a whistle, all except for the panoramic mirror. Back that one up to the must-see video where I've made that little plate up. Right there.
Oh, let's see. Okay, more 2C rocks. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now look underneath Paul's name.
What is that?
Exactly. It's dead.
It looks like a dead something.
It's dead. I don't know if they made it up as a plaster mold and made it look like a dead animal, or it's a real dead animal.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what that is. It's nothing.
That's why I put it on that. That's why I put that one up there.
Very interesting.
Yeah. This thing that you don't see.
Now, this one's interesting because it appears that there's a Labatt's beer can. And this takes me back to, there was a lady in Australia that went basically ballistic because she spotted a Coke bottle, I believe.
Rolling across the set. Yeah.
Yeah, on the set. And she's like, wait a minute, what is a Coke bottle doing on the moon, right? And
apparently that can is too vague for some people to see. I saw that in one of the comments.
That it's too big?
Vague.
Oh, vague.
Not clear enough to see.
Well,
yeah, this is
it looks like a can to me.
It's magnified big time. You know, this is obviously how the shot looked. It was you could see in the top left how small the object was in the original photo. So when you magnify it, it's going to be distorted. But it does appear to have a sheen to it. It seems to be somewhat metallic in nature of some sort. So it doesn't look like a moon rock to me. So
no footprints around it.
And no.
No, it does look like some sort of a can. It may not be this particular Labatt's beer can, but I mean, like I said, a lot of these things are pretty unmistakable. You know, like when the lady saw the Coke bottle, for one. I thought what was interesting was like the footage of the cars and the old, I don't know what, 58 or 57 Corvette, that you can see very clearly the front grill part of that, and then the back end of it, which has a very distinct line to it. that appeared to be buried under the sun. I think Paul's probably going to pull this one up. I mean, I looked at that and went, wow, that's incredible. And initially, I didn't see it, but then, this is the one that's way in the background.
I like that one too.
Yeah. But yeah, you look at some of these things and landfill, junkyard, this very much, I mean, you can definitely see, there it is. I mean, to me, that is a dead giveaway, especially the rear. The back part of it is such a giveaway. And you can see that, that front part of it. And it
you know what it looks like?
The whole stretch. What?
You know what it looks like? It looks like there's just spray on like industrial insulation. So like if you're building a hospital or something, like certain floors, like entire ceilings, yeah. Like it sprays on with the thing that like sticks, and that's exactly what it looks like.
That's not the only car in that photo.
There's several.
Of them. There's more down. I just pulled the one up to show. Right. There's all kinds of stuff. That's the same crater that Ancient Aliens pulled up the robot head or whatever.
Oh yeah, the one that looked like C-3PO.
Head, and right in front of it, there's a work belt sitting on the thing. I sent you a shot of the work belt.
Yeah, I saw the one with C-3PO, the C-3PO head. And, absolutely blown away at that because that, and now that I'm not sure, that looks like an old
Indian head
or something. Yeah,
it's painted.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And you see how the astronauts have shown it to you, right off the top of the handle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you want to go looking for stuff, just let the astronauts point it out to you.
Yep. Now, obviously, I'm sure a lot of people will come back and say, wow, you guys over at Globebusters really have a vivid imagination seeing all this stuff in this. But, to that, I would say maybe to some degree, you have to stretch your imagination a little bit. But then there's other stuff that is so blatantly wrong and that cannot be denied that, at this point, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that what we're seeing here was not shot on the moon. And, the likelihood of it being shot in a landfill is exponentially higher, especially with all the rain, mud, alternator parts, old cars. I mean, what makes more sense ultimately when you really get past the idea that we are being deceived here and what we're being shown here is a load of bollocks, then suddenly it's not such a stretch of the imagination when you put it in perspective and realize where NASA was shooting this stuff. And they were using this stuff for training shots, right?
Yep. Exactly. That's where they were doing all their training.
Mm-hmm. Which again still floors me, but I suppose that if I were NASA and I wanted to keep it as inconspicuous as possible, I would probably do something like that. It's kind of like, I don't know if you saw this or not, Scott, but Jaron about 2 years ago was looking around at a place up in Canada called Devon Island, and was just kind of looking around all over the place, and first thing he finds is some vehicles. It looks like they've got NASA stickers all over them, and then lo and behold,
maybe you should tell him it was like on Google Earth. He wasn't actually there.
Yeah. No, he wasn't always there, but already there. It was on Google Earth, but the fact that came up there was pretty amazing. And then of course, all the fanboys come back and say, well, obviously that's where they do all their training. And it's like, why? What resemblance other than terrestrially does Devon Island have to Mars?
That's where that protein comes from.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And thank you so much for coming on today and talking about this. And everybody, Paul, let everybody know all the videos that you and Scott did together are on your channel and on that playlist, or let them know what they need to know.
Yeah, all of them are available on my YouTube channel. It's just Paul on the Plane, and put together in a quick little playlist. So there's 7 so far, and hopefully, if Scott's willing, we can collaborate on a few more here in the near future. I would like that a lot.
Yeah, super. Scott, do you have anything else that you want to share on this that you want people to take a look at?
Well, I think we've pretty much covered everything. We got enough interest with people to take a closer look at the photographs. I mean, just about any photograph you pull up, there's something in there to be seen. There really aren't any random photos out there. I mean, I've spent thousands of hours studying them, and when I see them displayed now, or somebody's trying to debunk them or whatever, and I just look at them and I see what the problem is with the photograph, it's just hilarious, you know. But
yeah, so
I just hope everybody takes a look at the videos we put up and the photos that I have at Allis.com. David Percy and Mary Bennett, very kind to put the photographs up for me. He spent quite a bit of time helping me do the color plates up and make sure that they were clear and easy to understand.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Scott, obviously you have got tens of thousands of hours in looking at the Apollo missions and kind of going through the stills and the video footage and all that. Are you continuing that on at this point and looking at ISS footage, you know,
and Orion
things?
Oh yes,
excellent.
Oh, yes, all of that. I've looked through all the documentation for everything right back through from the late 1950s on with it, and Orion is just amazing, and it takes a long time to understand how they present the documents. Like if they're talking about radiation and you're reading a document for an hour or so and they're talking about rads per hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all the graphs are per minute.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that you're reading that. So, the numbers are down. It's only 0.05 this or whatever, right? Well, it's per minute. Right? You multiply it by 60. Right? And Orion, I've read it through everything, and there was one little asterisk on it, and it said, this is by this simulation software. Right? Mm-hmm. For all the graphics and charts that they do on it. It's not the actual radiation numbers that they so-called collected on it.
Yep.
And at no time has NASA ever given a radiation number from outside the craft.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Considering which radiation they're supposed to be.
Right, and then so how do you know how well the craft is protecting it?
Yeah, well, I don't think with a few layers of aluminum foil it's protecting much of anything. and it even, you know, admitted by NASA that it's very kind of shoddily built or built with foil and you know, things that obviously not lead, like you would not even anything as heavy as a lead apron that you would get put over you at the dentist's office. So yeah, they some things it's just better for them simply to not address at all. Otherwise, they wind up burning themselves, because they do every time they open their mouth and they start talking about something. They get burned on it, because, you know, then we turn it around and say, well, what's going on with this then? So I think that they really need to be very careful and very selective about what they say. A very interesting topic, to say the least, Scott. So do you make YouTube videos, or I don't even know if you have a channel, or how do you
I don't.
work? Okay,
no,
through Allis?
At the moment, just the only stuff I have up is on the Allis site and what Paul and I have done.
Okay.
I've been on the air with Marcus Allen a couple of times.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just curious if somebody wanted to find your work otherwise, but
the website's out of Clearview, Florida. It's Let's Talk Radio with Todd Bates.
Let's Talk Radio. Okay. I will put that in the show notes for everybody, so people can go back and hear your other interviews and some of the other stuff that you've covered. But you're doing some great work, Scott, and it's fascinating. And I don't know where you find the patience to pour through tens of thousands of hours worth of video and photographs and stuff. But obviously, it is kind of compelling. When you realize you're onto a bunch of frauds, it kind of, I guess, gives you a little motivation, right?
Well, when you find something, we didn't actually cover the one with the pile of dirt with the gloves in it. When I found that one, I had about the same reaction as Bart Zabrell when he describes finding when he realized he was sitting with the footage in his household and how dangerous it could be. I mean, I was sitting for about an hour just with my heart racing, going, "Oh my God, look what I found!" Right?
Yeah.
And then I really knew what I was looking for. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then hundreds of things.
Yeah, I know the feeling. A little over 2 years ago, or about 2 years ago, we were doing an ISS show on Globebusters, and it was one of those times when we were watching the ISS, and they started doing a pan from left to right, and we're just going, "Oh, come on, don't tell me they're going to actually show a 360 pan." And we're getting all excited watching it, and we pan in the Earth. It goes all the way across the Earth. It keeps panning. The Earth is completely out of the picture. And we're just in utter amazement going, "Oh my God, are they going to pan around to show outer space?" And the next thing we know, it keeps panning, and here comes the Earth right back into the frame again, right?
Yeah.
It continuing on in the same direction. Blew us all away. But that's one of those finds that you're just like, "Oh, wow. NASA really blew it."
I mean, I went through the photographs in chronological order. So by the time I got to Apollo 17, I studied each of the astronauts as well, so I understood their character, their home life, how they interacted between each other, that kind of thing. So I knew exactly the type of characters they were going into there, and it wasn't very long that I'm sitting looking at it going, "Oh my God, these guys are just playing in the mud."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's a wet flag, and then I realized that 45 years and nobody has seen this thing as wet.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, sometimes
I call it the Emperor's New Clothing Syndrome.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of like that story.
It's exactly what it is.
Yep. There's kind of a story that, they talk about the Native Americans supposedly had never seen ships before. And there's this story out there that when they had come near the shore, the natives could not see them because they had never seen anything like that before. It had never entered their paradigm. And in a way, that's kind of true. It really takes a fresh perspective sometimes for something to come out that a whole room full of people can miss. And then there's just that one unique individual that, looks at things just a little different. And it's like, "Oh my God, how did we miss that?" So gotta love it.
well, that's the thing is, when the original researchers were starting out, okay, they were using their own personal knowledge or skills and looking at the information. Okay, and you have somebody that has knowledge of the rockets and everything else, and Bill Casing comes up with it and he says these things couldn't fly. He looks at the photographs and say that couldn't happen, right? There's no blast crater. This couldn't happen. That couldn't happen. It should have been a done deal right then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it should have been, but
and then it follows up with Ralph Renee and James Collier and everybody else coming onto it. Even Marcus Allen sits down, and I do know Marcus Allen. His expertise with the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to him, and he said, "Well, I had a dozen photographs."
Yeah.
And they were airbrushed in for magazine quality, whatever. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Me, I have the entire internet. I have entire NASA to draw from. I have every photograph available. Right?
Yep.
And what I did is I kept to myself because people were saying, oh, look at this guy, look at this guy's research, and look at that guy's research. And I said, if I do that, I won't be on my own. I'll be looking at what they did, right?
Yep.
I looked at it after.
Yep.
After my
Great.
decision.
Yep.
And that was the main thing. Like some of the stuff I found, other people have found, but I would have missed it if I had just been chasing, little anomalies and strange-looking rocks and shadows. Right?
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, all right. Well, anyway, all right. Well, I guess we're going to probably wrap this thing up then, Scott. But yeah, just superb work, and I'd like to have you on again in the future sometime. Maybe go over some of your new stuff, or maybe some more stuff that you have, because I think it's fascinating, and you're one of the guys that is putting in an immense amount of time doing this, and I really appreciate your point of view.
Well, thank you for having me on. Be more than happy to come back. Paul and I will probably do another series when he gets up on the next one. That'd be a good time to bring us back on and do it. I'm old enough. I don't need to start learning how to do my own videos. Right?
I hear you. I feel the same way.
And I look at the photographs. I look at the photographs, and people say, "Oh, why don't you do this with them and that, and photo negatives and up the contrast and everything else?" It's either in the photograph or it's not, right? I'm not going to study the format of it. Those are other professionals can do that, right?
Yep.
Looking at the photographic structure, I'm just looking at what's in the photograph and why that photograph was taken.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you do a great job at it too.